right. Hello, magical friends. So, I'm really excited to get to talk with you about the archetypes and the tarot and major arcana mostly. I may do another little bonus video talking a little bit more about the minor arcana, but a lot of the themes that show up in the major are mirrored, maybe on a smaller, more personal scale in the minor arcana. So, but today's focus is just going to be just the majors and kind of talking over some of the themes and patterns that show up, and also looking at the literal as compared to the liminal messages that we might get from these cards. So, but before I start, I wanted to share with you a couple of books that I've really been enjoying, that also go into a lot of, they're using the tarot cards and delving more into even how you can connect them to body practices. So, Laura Tempest Zakroff's newer book, if I can get it, do it without the glare, Anatomy of a Witch, Map to the Magical Body. All my little purple markers here are the different sections and talking about the different aspects of witch anatomy and witch life, and the different ways that the archetypes from the major arcana, from the Fool, and I believe it goes up to our last one, from the Fool through the Hermit, at least. But showing how those themes correlate with the practices found within this book. This is wonderful. Reading from the back here, it says Embodied Witchcraft for Wisdom, Connection, and Power. And it's a great guide for really using yourself, your body, your physical form as a tool for your magical practice. Whatever that looks like, whatever tradition you're in. Doesn't really matter. Like, this is very applicable for, I could say, just about anybody. Basically, if you have a body, and like I've said in other things before, maybe not recently, but the body needs to be yours. It can't be someone else's body. Yeah. I don't know. Goofy joke, weirdo. Okay, and then the other one that I've really been enjoying even more of a deep dive into is Tarot and the Archetypal Journey. Blah. The Jungian Path from Darkness to Light. So, written by Sally Nichols, who she died in 1982, but was a longtime student of Jung's psychology and studied with Jung at his institute in Zurich, has taught trainees, and has lectured a lot. Had lectured a lot on this topic. This book is just so good. There's so much information in here, and like each section and chapter goes even like really delves into um, the the symbology, the correspondences, and so much more in the major arcana. Um, okay, so I figured for this I would also talk with you. We'd kind of talk through and look at. The deck I'm going to use today is my Morgan Greer deck, which I really like. It was the first deck that I purchased for myself. Before that, I had been, either kind of perusing some borrowed decks, but it was the first one that became mine, solely mine, and I love it very much. So we start, and like we talked about, we were talking about last week with our not last week, 2 weeks ago, with our Let's Be Fools. So this guy, our fool, and I use guy in a gender neutral term, I'm sorry. It's yeah, habit. So our fool, marching on ahead, along in a journey, has their little companion friend who may be providing some sort of support or guidance or direction, but also seems to be pretty happy, kind of, all right, new adventure, what's going on? We've got their little baggie, we've got their rose, and a little rosebud. Things are blooming. It just is a very like things are moving forward, and they're going off to do their thing. And although we can't really see where they're walking to, like I said, we covered this card a bit more in the previous video. So with our Fool, so we get with archetypes, so we can, if you're familiar with any of Joseph Campbell's work, which is also similarly influenced by Carl Jung, where Joseph Campbell is talking about like the hero's journey, and then even goes into kind of in his later life was talking about how that shows up in a lot of our movies, a lot of the entertainment in our books. Like we're looking at the growth process of the protagonist through a series of challenges, and potentially rooting for them the whole time. And one of his main examples was really looking at like the Star Wars original first trilogy. So a lot of those characters, but I mean, we see it in so many different uh, stories. Everything from Harry Potter to Hunger Games to all sorts of things. There's this kind of our person that we can see something of ourselves there. There are I heard a really neat thing. So it's not a mirror, it's a window. So it's not an exact reflection, but we're looking and we can like there's familiar things and we're looking out into it, but we're also curious wanting to get messages. And so we're just going to take our stuff and move out into the world. Our wanderer, our what's some other ones? I would say it's very youthful. So it could be like a young person who's maybe a young warrior, someone who's early in their journey. That kind of energy moving along into that. Then we move into our magician. So our magician is the very like skilled and capable energy. It could be a person, it could be the set of skills and tools that you have for managing things in your life. It's your resources. It's and it's calling in everything. So it's not just from one area. It's body, mind, spirit. It's the elements. It's all the sum of all of your experiences, the lessons you've learned, kind of the good, the bad, and the ugly. And you it's the mastery of those things. But there also could be a bit of a the person's they're the master, but they're kind of like they still want to like be exciting and do things, so they might be a bit of a trickster, a rebel. So like when you think of like the Jedi masters, like Yoda. He's got these secrets, like he's mastered this stuff, but he's not just he might show you all the tools, but he's not just gonna like download everything with you in how to use them. So you're gonna have to do some trial and error to figure out how they work for you. And I would say like those are almost more like the tangible things that you have available to you. When you're working with the more intangible, we get into our liminal, the things that are a little like unseen, subconscious spiritual work, things that are a little harder to pin down and sometimes very frustrating with our High Priestess. So our High Priestess is the keeper of the knowledge for the spiritual growth and those deeper, murkier mysteries. Some may find this to be a challenging card because they may see this as a very literal person who is the holder of things, but they might be kind of holding onto these things with an iron fist and not willing to share. So if it's something that gets challenging, where you're like, oh, High Priestess, I really don't like this card. She's just kind of, standoffish and doesn't want to tell me things. It's not one that you are actively wanting to seek out. Then looking into a bit more of a liminal understanding is the not so much about the person, but the what's behind the curtain. What is it that you're seeking to understand? What are the signs that are going to indicate to you that you're starting to understand? And that even if you don't know exactly what the outcome is going to be, you can identify your landmarks along the way. That way, you know you're getting closer. So, it might be that, you're like, oh, well, I'm wanting a deeper spiritual understanding of myself. And I feel like this, it just keeps getting blocked. So looking at that situation and kind of and thinking about what what does it look like when I've reached that understanding? Who am I? What does it feel like? What do I do? What do I wear? How do I express myself? If you have an idea of any of those specifically, then it's going to be easier for you to identify when you're, close to or you're gaining that mastery and understanding. And that self identification and awareness, and even asking that question of yourself or those questions of yourselves, is very liminal High Priestess. Then our Empress. So the funny part is, okay, with this deck, I just have to point out, so I know she's holding a shield here with this bird. The funny part is whenever I see this card out of the corner of my eye, for some reason I think she's holding a slice of pizza. I don't know. It's just a weird thing. Always makes me a little bit hungry. But our Empress here, like, it's, she's this like guide and protector. It's Mama Earth. It's the mother. It's someone who's, they've put a lot of work into things and they're seeing the benefits of what's happening. So the Empress could be literal, your mom, in whatever way you want to take that, or someone who has that energy in your life, a mentor, someone you work with, anything. So, like I said, it could be a very literal archetypal figure and energy that's showing up for you. If it's something that's maybe, this could be, again, one of those challenging cards where you're just kind of like, it brings up challenges, or, heartache, pain, that kind of thing. Looking at the liminal aspects of it is about the ability to navigate all the things in your world. Like you're able to feed yourself, clothe yourself, bathe yourself. You're doing the things that make you feel good. You're bringing in creative projects that feed you. Notice these words I'm using are still very much talking about it's this Empress energy, but not so much in a literal figure sense. More of the liminal, looking at kind of these more subtle experiences and how you attend to them within yourself and within your life. Then we have our Emperor. Da-da-da. So, pretty much our archetypal father figure. Strong, direct. Has managed all the chaos. Knows how to delegate to people. This and that and the other thing is going to happen. Has a very clear idea of how things need to be, and will tell everyone about it. And again, for people, like, they might look at this and go, oh, archetypal father. And then they're like, oh, and then all of their issues, their challenges, their traumas, all the things come to the forefront when looking at the literal, meaning, messages of this card. So when we're looking at our liminal aspects is, again, we're recognizing within ourselves what are the qualities of the archetypal father that we can recognize. Or maybe they're ones that we're like, well, it's not there, but I know that I want to have more of that. And so it's really looking at specifically like your process. How would you get more of that? What would that look like? Again, we're using support, even, a few cards back from our High Priestess. Those secretive mysteries are also going to support how we can access and find the archetypal energies of the Emperor that we may be looking for. And our Hierophant. So this is a card that, from what I've heard from, from a lot of people, is this one can be a challenging one. I've even had my own challenges with it because we have this very literal sense of it's a pope. It's religious. It's direction. It's this like, this is the tradition and this is how it is. Blah, 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 blah. You notice he's got like these keys are here and he's like very like doom. And I'm saying this card has a almost a bit of an androgynous representation. It is a little more, to me, masculine energy feeling, and that it's a very forthright. There's eye contact, like it's looking at you right into your soul, and you know it may pass judgment, but it's more about directing. This is what you need to do next in order to work within this system. So, like I was saying, our literal sense of this guy, it could be religious figures. It could be, it's got anyone who's had this kind of hierarchical position and expertise. And similar to the High Priestess, like they will share it with you, but you've got to do the work before they're just going to give you access to all of it. Because if they gave you access to all of it and you don't understand it, you can't put it to good use anyway. In a more liminal sense, I see the Hierophant as it's the indication of our like societal structures and expectations. Is, it could be gender roles or not. It could be in, we're trying to, as we try to figure out our way forward, even out of this pandemic, like a lot of these, like the structures, the way things were, the things that we could expect, even within our traditions, like going on vacations, things like that, so much has changed. And it can be very confusing as we're trying to find direction and we're trying to look ahead and find whether it's one person or solid sources of information that are going to help us just keep moving forward and thriving in our life. And this is a card that in the liminal sense is also, you're needing to access that inner wisdom. And if you're struggling with tapping into that inner wisdom, then kind of asking like, hey, what's going on? Like, are you feeling a sense of maybe you're unemployed, maybe you're annoyed, you're not getting what you need or you want because the current system or the current traditions aren't fitting. You don't have the right key to get what you need. And the message from the liminal Hierophant might be like, okay, there's a different key. It's got a different fit, and we need to figure out what that is. And after the Hierophant are lovers. So this can be, for some people, a very literal relationships, love, lovers, that kind of thing. But then as we look into like the liminal parts of it, like there's relationships, and we have relationships in so many different ways. They're not always romantic. We have relationships with ourselves, with other people, with other objects, with our pets, with our car, with our job, we have relationships with things that are both material and, immaterial, things that we can't actually see or touch or feel. We just have a knowing that this thing is present for us. And the lovers, in a more liminal sense, it's not a fixed place in time. It's kind of an awareness of possibilities. Maybe they're opposing forces, maybe not. Maybe they're energies that work really well together, and you're like, oh, I would like grace and empathy, as an example. So if it's, you pull this one and you're like, oh, lovers, okay, really, like, and you feel like you're getting smacked in the face with heteronormative, cisgendered relationship stuff, is, walk it back a little bit and think about, okay, no, what am I, so if there's choices, decisions. How am I adjusting to the balance and how I relate to things in my life? And our chariot. Dun, dun, dun. I always feel like this one needs like trumpets or something. So our chariot. So moving forward, this energy, this is going somewhere. Like these horses are, they're pulling away. The interesting thing is noting that these horses, black and white, so there's two, could be opposing forces, could be the lovers. the lovers, the lover's energy is now harnessed to this chariot, and the fool is like pretty well in charge. He knows how to drive this thing, and they're gonna forge on ahead. So it's like in the literal sense, we're looking at like this direction, forward movement with confidence, with mastery, and that things are balanced and stuff's going to happen. In a more liminal sense, is kind of looking at the item, the things present in your chariot card. So, what do you relate the most to? The driver, whatever is pulling, whatever is the representative of the vehicle of the chariot. Some cards, there's a motorcycle, might be an actual car, could be anything else. Like there's so many different representations of the chariot. What's the person who is in charge of driving, of navigating, either what they look like, what they're wearing. Do those have any meaning for you? In this particular card, I like that he's got these little half moons on his shoulder, and then the sun is at the center of the chest. So there's like the sun and the heart and the life force, but it's also balanced by the emotions and the unconscious energies. So the moon, and we'll get into the moon a little bit later. So there's this sense of integration. I also like that this particular character's crown has pentacles. So we've got like the integration of like of the elements: earth, air, fire, water, and spirit, or any other 5 correspondence that feels appropriate for you. And yeah, so the chariot really, I think, has a lot of opportunity for connecting to the liminal aspects of it and kind of breaking down and looking at, okay, what are the things that really resonate with me on any level with this card? And also identifying the things that don't. So it's like maybe you're kind of like, I don't know what this like blue, cover tarpy thing, whatever, that's blowing in the wind. That just seems, why? I mean, other than it provides some sun protection. Maybe keeps you a little bit cooler. So, yeah. Then, strength. Our strength card. So, strength. I see this as like a in some ways like it's another aspect or element even of our Empress, in that it's also mastery and control of something that could possibly get a little bit kind of wild and crazy. So it could be emotions, passions, desires, whatever you want to ascribe the animal figure with. The lion, the wildness, nature, any of those things. This could mean literal physical strength, but also however strength applies. And then as we look at the liminal is looking at kind of what, if we look inside our bodies, where would be your center, your home, your place of inner strength, the wellspring? Where does it reside? There's not really a wrong answer for that. But maybe it's in different places. Maybe, some people it's in their head. Some people might be their chest. It could be a hand. It could be in your pelvis. But give that a little consideration. Kind of think of, okay, if strength was going to live in my body, where would it be? How would I access it? What would I need to do in order to have regular access to it? Um, what does it feel like when it gets a little bit out of control? What does it feel like when it gets a lot out of control or out of balance? And what practices help you feel like, yeah, you got things managed? Then we get into our hermit. This lovely introvert on the top of a mountain with a star and the light. And I say this is, the literal sense, like we're looking at the archetype of like a shaman, an oracle, a monk, someone who has removed themselves from everyday life and spent time both looking within themselves, but also doing other study to better understand inner wisdom, and then providing a way that they can light the way out for themselves. And they may share this with others, or may encourage others to come to their mountaintop and discover their own little light. In a more liminal sense, I see that like this is spirit, the spirit energy, and how is that around you? How does that reside in your body? Does it reside in your body? Does it just reside around your body, or is it somewhere completely different? Is it location dependent? Is it something that maybe you only feel more connected to when you're somewhere specific? And or maybe it is, of someone who has a lot of these qualities, and so when you think about the hermit, that's the person who comes to mind. And even if you don't actually have like visualizate, like can't visually see things, and I want to acknowledge that not everyone has the ability to have this picture in their mind of anything specific, or they might be kind of fuzzy. If they're fuzzy, hey, liminal. But that can also be kind of frustrating. So, which I think is for me, that is part of why I love working with the cards so much, is it has there is a visual representation that allows me to then extrapolate further and get curious, and I can look for both the literal and the liminal messages that I might need at any given time. Wheel of Fortune. Oh, our wheel. I love that this one is kind of a spinning wheel with a handle, and there's like the disembodied hand from the clouds. This deck sometimes has a bit of a, a Monty Python feel to it. There's like the hand from the clouds that's doing things. And we've got, the people that are celebrating on the top, and then this poor soul who's just kind of been launched off into the next thing. We don't know how far they're falling. There's a sense of the wheel could be moving steadily. It could be moving kind of fast. This particular wheel, I feel like it's moving kind of quickly. It might kind of be a little bit chaotic. And in a literal sense. So literal sense, like wheels, looking at things that are cycles, the seasons, how these cycles show up in our life. And looking at or even creative processes, create work projects. What is the wheel? If you were to be sitting on top of a wheel, what would that feel like? What would you see? What would you be doing? I don't know. I'd probably be hanging onto the thing and possibly screaming because I don't like heights. I want to be the one turning the wheel, not the one sitting on top of it. In a more liminal sense, is kind of recognizing evenly within our bodies, our cycles, the cycles during the day. When do you sleep? When do you eat your meals? When what is the routine that helps you just get through the day and feel in touch with yourself, maybe feel productive, and identifying that sometimes external forces are gonna throw your wheel, your cycle, off kilter. And what do you do to adjust to that? Does the wheel run away? Do you have to go chase the wheel? Can you get it back going again? Does it get wobbly? So on and so forth. Then we have justice. Our arbitrator. And I, often depicted with a two-edged sword and or scales. And again, we've got this figure with, potentially two pillars, and we can't see what's going on behind it, which is okay. So, literal sense, a judge or anyone else who is kind of a mediator or arbitrator of, whether it's the laws, legal things, the like a director of like the rules and guidelines. So maybe it's your HR person. Um, it could be a religious person. Um, it's something where it's still it's the reminder of that justice is, when like at its best, is neutral, and that when it's making a judgment and trying to seek out something fairness, it still might not be comfortable for everybody involved, because there's so many different things to consider and factors to keep in mind. Yeah, with our justice card. So, it could be a literal person that maybe it's someone who, really evokes these qualities really, really well. Um, or maybe it's a challenging card. You look at it and you're just kind of like, oh, I just don't want to deal with this. Like this, just no, thank you. No, 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 thank you. And so again, like similar, like I mentioned with the Chariot. So when we're looking at more liminal aspects, justice is kind of thinking, what does the word mean? Is there a place in our body that we feel a sensation when we think of the word or the concept of justice? And like, where does it land? Is it in the heart? Does it maybe constrict, or maybe does it kind of rile up your passions? And we're looking at these things, like you have the scales. What sorts of things are you wrestling with in terms of whether it's making a decision, or you're trying to figure out, maybe you've been through all this other stuff after the decision, and now you're trying to kind of figure out, okay, what are the lessons that I want to take away from this? What are the things that are going to help me in the next part of the cycle of things? I see this is kind of a resting point, a place to regroup, get centered, kind of reconnect to what are those initial goals? How, are you any closer to getting to where you wanted to be? And that, it may be not so much about like the literal, like, oh, I need a person who is a justice, but it's more about, what is my internal felt sense telling me about the outcomes, the balance, the energy flow, and the way that I may need to move through this thing. And again, being specific in that, rather than going, oh, well, I want to be, I want things to be happy and fair. Okay. Well, in order for things to be happy and fair, what needs to happen? What does it look like? And be like as clear and specific with yourself as possible. Like, in order for things to be happy and fair, I want to make sure there's money in my bank account. I want to make sure I'm getting along with my boss and my coworkers. I want to feel confident when I'm talking about the things that I have experience with. I want to feel like I'm able to take in other perspectives without it being a threat to my identity, so on and so forth. These are just off the cuff examples that I'm thinking of. And after our justice, we're still kind of sort of resting, but then also trying to kind of figure out like what in the world is going on next. So we have our hanged one. So, when we've gotten our justice, either direction or decisions, or maybe like something got decided for us and we're trying to figure out how we feel about it. What do we do with this information? Maybe it's not what you expected. You're kind of like, well, crap, now what? That's definitely what this card is. It's the you may be in a physical waiting space, or it may feel like it's a little more on a spiritual or emotional level. Um, the thing is though is you're not necessarily uh, you're not in agony. Um, may not even be a lot of flailing, but you're just kind of like, well, I can't go anywhere until this next thing happens. And so in the literal sense with our hanged man is it's the looking at okay, what's got you stuck? Or yeah, what are the obstacles? What are the roadblocks? What are the things that are preventing the forward motion that, you had things going pretty good with the chariot. What happened? And what maybe what resources or tools do you need to provide support to yourself during this waiting period? Because, hanging upside down by one ankle is not going to be comfortable for very long. Then if we're looking at more of our liminal aspects, it's that this is a liminal card. Like this is literally it's limbo. It's in this in between state. And how does that feel for you? Is it okay? Do you hate this state? And if you're feeling a lot of like discomfort, it's kind of like, okay, well, what would help you feel better? What are the signs? What are the tools? What are the things that you need in order to help yourself kind of relax a little bit and rest and be aware and open to seeing what's coming next? That way you're ready to take action when it happens. You're ready to hop down and wander off, go do the thing. You could also think about it. I was thinking about what the liminal too is. What are the well, we talked about the obstacles, but it is the like what's tripping you up, what's got you stuck. And when you're looking at that, it's easy to get into the mindset of, oh my God, I did it again. And you start throwing the blame and the shame and the guilt, and your inner critic will come roaring to the surface and starts just kind of shaming you, and it can be really unpleasant. So instead of an inner critic, is think about who would you like to show up and give you support? Maybe it's one of the previous cards. Maybe it's the Empress. Maybe it's the Emperor. Maybe who knows? Maybe you need that Chariot to hurry up. Hurry up and get here so I can like stop being in this really awkward position. Yeah, just some cues for thinking about working with when that card shows up, and it can be kind of an awkward one. Oh, speaking of awkward, death. Oh, yes, the pruning and the cutting away of things. In order for things to grow, things need to die. I think a lot of people know that this card is not about literal death. It's not you pull this and you're like, oh my God, I'm going to die, or somebody else is going to die. But it's generally that indication of, you were in the hangman space, but in order for you to like really make progress moving ahead, you got to trim off the stuff that's not working. You can't take it with you. And you could try, but it's not going to work out very well. So it's that invitation to really go, okay, I don't need this baggage. I don't need this, whatever it is that's weighing you down. Maybe it's people, maybe it's relationships, maybe it's, who knows? Maybe you're like, I need a new job. That's where this guy comes in handy. So, and, this sense of, I think this white rose here, it was also in the Fool card. I like it's in like this bloom. So it's at a point where you might be trimming it to bring it in your house and appreciate it. And by doing that is going to allow the plant to make more flowers, because it's not trying to then like nourish this one because it's gone. So thinking about this can be not physical, literal. I mean, it can be physical, thinking about letting things go. You might need to literally, like, do you have boxes that you need to take to the thrift store? That kind of thing. Will you feel better when that stuff is gone? Um, Maybe there's, relationships, or there's other things that you're trying to clear away because it just kind of keeps coming up over and over and over again, and you feel like you're done with it. So, like, really make a ceremony for it. How are you going to get rid of it? How are you going to let it go? How are you going to release it? What is going to be your sickle that helps you harvest whatever it is? And maybe it's something that you're going to harvest and then you're going to consume the fruits and it's going to be great. Or you're just like, no, I just need to cut it down and just be done. So we have like that in like the literal sense of like our actions, the things that we're going to do in order to release and work with the energy of death and rebirth. And in a liminal sense too, it's maybe this you connect to it more during a particular time of year. I feel like this is a very autumn card, close to Samhain, so in the northern hemisphere, might be October. So it's looking at this sense of when you can detect that things feel a little more transparent. Maybe you have a more fine-tuned sense of your emotional energy levels or physical energy levels. And it helps you understand when you're like, oh, okay, I have like these events happening this weekend. I know it's going to be a lot. So this is how I need to manage my energy so I can enjoy these things. And it might mean that you have to let something go. Like, well, I can't go to all the things because it's just not going to be practical. And so you're partaking in a more liminal practice because it's not something that you necessarily see, but you're attending to this ability within your body for this death and rebirth, giving yourself more opportunity to do things later. Which then moves us into this wonderful magical space with temperance. Some decks also call this the alchemist. And I like the idea of this creating. There is a sense of balance. There's also a sense of the elements. You're going to may need multiple materials, multiple resources, and you're creating something new. And some people they see this one as a literal like, oh, it's about moderation. It needs to be even. It needs to be balanced. It needs to be fair. Okay, great. The thing is, balance isn't a stagnant point. It's constantly moving and shifting and adapting. Even if you pour 2 glasses of water exactly the same, they're not going to evaporate at the same rate. A couple days later, water levels are going to be completely different because that's just the way it works. So I see this more as literally a fluid state. It's in motion, and it's going to require the ability to utilize more liminal techniques. Might be some physical, might be some literal, like, okay, I need to put this and this and this. I mean, cooking, that could be temperance. But also when you're looking at like creating something that is a little harder to identify. If you're like, oh, I want to, I'm creating my best life. Okay, that's going to take a lot of tools and resources and parts, and it's going to be a lot of fiddling and experimenting and research and, trial and error, and realizing that when you're on a path, if it's not working, you get to switch gears and you get to try something different. Like it's not all or nothing. And I think that this card is a really wonderful way of demonstrating that, it's the things need to be distributed a bit and kind of play with the levels of what you need. Maybe you need more physical practices. Maybe you're doing great, like you're like, no, I feel good with the physical stuff, but I want to spend a little more time with some like spiritual inquiry for finding my own internal balance. Something that I feel a lot is within our physical bodies, but within our lives is an ecosystem. And we are consistently doing things, consciously or unconsciously, that affect our ecosystem. And that when things get out of balance is when there's some part or parts of our ecosystem that need to be tended to. And then the devil. I personally think this is kind of a fun card. Um, depending on your relationship with it, some people really don't like this card. It also depends, I think, on the imagery in the card. This particular deck, the devil's kind of fuzzy and I want to pet it. I would ask for consent first, though. They're like, hey, can I pet you? Would that be okay? It might say no, might say yes. Who knows? The devil. So, when we look at a lot of representations of this card and we look at like the literal sense, sometimes it's the literal, like, oh, the shadow, the not the unconscious, but the things that are maybe being hidden. Could be, you know, literally like what devilish energy is showing up in your life. That's, maybe a bit mischievous. Again, we might have a bit of the rebel, the trickster. We looked at different horn god entities, the sense of maybe the playfulness or mystery, but also a sense of confidence. They're pretty sure of themselves, as are most male mammals that have horns. Sometimes to the point of being a bit blind. They might just run around and headbutt each other all day long. If you've ever seen the goats that have pool noodles on their horns because they can't be trusted to not stab each other, that's a bit of like kind of an extreme example. But with the devil, like, it's the things that we chain ourselves to while we're trying to seek happiness, or we're trying to, live our best life. And it's attachments. And I know there are some schools of thought that are like, oh, you shouldn't have any attachments at all. But I feel like that's a really weird way to live. Because, you what are you trying to detach from everything? And that, does that include your body? And one way that I think about, especially with a more liminal sense with this card, is the devil is representative of our embodied self and the things that we can do to be sensual creatures. And I don't mean sensual in a sexual way, although that can be part of it, but sensual in the of having senses, of having sensory experiences. What are the things that remind you that you have a body, that you enjoy about your body? Or, if you're like if you're someone who's like, it's really hard, is the devil may be your liminal representation of the challenges of the relationship with the body. And I have a whole other video that I had shared earlier on that kind of talked a bit more about um, the energy and messages from the devil card specifically. And I feel like it's an important one to consider. Is that, are we thinking of it in the literal sense of like, oh, it's bad, oh, it's hell, it's, we're trapping ourselves, and again, letting that inner critic come out and be like, oh, you shouldn't be doing that, blah 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 blah. Or can you use it in a way that empowers you? Say, I'm taking control of these sensory experiences, and I'm going to master these, and I'm going to be so good at taking care of myself. It's also an amazing self-care card. What is it that's going to make you feel the most like a horned badass? The Tower. We're getting close to the end of things. Okay, our tower. Bolts of lightning from out of the sky. Generally depicted on the card as some sort of a tower or storm or building that is being impacted with explosive results. And I also find this card is interesting. It's got several of the different elements in it. Like you've got a sense of there's a storm, so there's probably, we've got air, there's electricity, there's fire. The tower kind of looks like it's made out of wood. It's catching fire, and we've got water. So there's a lot of things happening here. And this is a card that again could be very literal. You're talking about, this what's been shaken down to the foundations, what's fallen apart, what has just completely imploded in your life. Or maybe it's more in a liminal sense of maybe it hasn't happened yet, but it's a sign of, okay, some belief, something I value, maybe a tradition that I've kept is going to get shaken up. And how am I going to deal with that? Are you going to, think about the pandemic. Like we've had people's responses, like some people have adapted and they're like, okay, we need to wear a mask. And then they go get vaccinated and then they can take off the mask. And then they're like, oh, no, we got to wear the mask again. So they're just like, they're going to roll with it. Like these things keep happening that like upend the way that we do things as a society. And they're like, all right, cool, we're just going to do that. And then you have the other people that just scream and flail and refuse to change, refuse to understand science, refuse to just adjust. It's almost like they're like, yeah, they're still falling. They're still in this state of like they just can't even deal with it. It's just going to keep happening over and over and over again. Their foundation's going to get eroded and then they just take it out on everybody else. So when these moments happen for you, and you've probably had at least one time in your life that you can think of that would be kind of a tower moment or a tower experience, is then kind of think about, okay, what was, kind of how you were feeling and what was going on before. Think about during and after. So you know that when something like this is going on, whether it's on an energetic level or a physical level, whether it's literal or it's in the liminal space, that buckle up. It's going to be challenging, and you can manage things. Partly, I like the idea of if you stay connected with the body or devil. So I was talking about the embodiment here. So one way of managing the energy of the tower and the chaos that might be coming is staying connected with embodiment practices or connecting with the ground. So doing grounding, centering work, something that's helping keep you connected to your foundation in any way possible. And then after the tower, we have our star. So, in the literal sense, like it's this sense of, the storm has passed. Things are healing, stuff is regrowing, the water is flowing, the birds are chirping, there's peace in the night sky, there's no clouds, and the sense of that, we have this naked person on the card, that whatever naked means to you. It could be in a very literal sense. Maybe you feel the most free without any clothes on. Or it's more about the just the comfort in your own skin, in the kind of the fresh vulnerability that happens after something big like the tower. But again, it's the body. So, if you're connected with your body throughout all of this process, then you can continue doing the work of restoring and moving and looking ahead in a more hopeful, optimistic way. And in our liminal sense, so the different kind of the energy of this card. So if you think about a star, they're generally very, very far away. the light might flicker a little bit. It's very possible a star that you're seeing in the sky no longer actually physically exists, but it just takes that long for the light to reach us. It's kind of faint, but it's also a connection to the universe. It's a connection to things beyond what we can see or understand or what we know. It's a sense that there's more, that there's, the word that gets used a lot with this card is hope, but it's also this sense of as the cycle and the processes move forward, that even the light that you have generated will shine out and be embraced by someone. You might not even know who. It might be long after you're gone. But something that you have done will help someone else continue with their journey and moving forward. The moon. Our big bright full moon here with our our funny lobster crawdad thing. I love that it's purple. It's kind of like, woohoo, it's having a party. It's going to pinch things. The moon. So some people see this as very, like, we're looking at literal, like our literal moon, the moon that's in our night sky, and how it's a reflection of the sun's light. It doesn't generate its own light. It reflects the sun, which a reflection is not necessarily the whole picture. And that there's a sense of there's more. Like, we know there's a dark side of the moon. There's a whole backside of this little rock orbiting our planet that we can't see. The only way to see it would be to go up in space and come around the backside and take a look at it. We sometimes get to see darker aspects of the face that faces the planet, depending on the phase of the moon and or if it's a lunar eclipse. Depending on what the sunlight is doing. It's very dependent on the sun. But these are also still very important in helping us connect with our instincts, our intuition. And that was kind of interesting. A lot of times this card has a couple of whether they're wolves or dogs, that are thought to be very instinctual animals. They just do things. Dogs just do. They're not going to spend a whole lot of time thinking about why they're doing the thing. They just do it. It comes naturally. Is connecting to that energy for ourselves. So what is something that you would love to have come a bit more instinctually? What could you do to help boost any intuitive practices? And what is your comfort level with those concepts? So thinking about that, it could be, you implement actual, like it could be psychic practices, whether you're working with divination, dream work, more stuff with archetypes, joining a group, like a spiritual study group, going to therapy. All those kinds of things are like very working with this moon quality and energy. And in a way that helps kind of, we're utilizing that sense of hope from the star and then applying it even more internally and working with things that we can't touch, that we can't see. It's more about feeling. And that can be kind of weird. Like, I can't feel the thing, but I think it's there. And our sun. This is a lot more of our I would say even more of our physical sense. It's like we've done this work, like our embodied self has survived the tower and is kind of has replenished itself, has a better understanding of what's under the surface, and is ready to really like burst into action and flourish and relish the sun. And this is our height of midsummer energy type of card. But also, like, literally, like, if you get too much sun, you can get sunburnt. Too much sun can kill a plant. So you still have to kind of pay attention to what's happening with the level of sun, of literal sun, even figurative sun. Um, is that, have you lost all sense of the connection to the unknown and the shadows? So within the liminal, um, kind of thinking about like sun energy, where does that reside in your body? Is it in your digestive tract? Is it your heart? Is it your head? Maybe it's a particular, maybe it's a hand. Maybe the moon is one hand and the sun is the other, or feet, or whatever. So just have some fun with that and kind of think about, okay, if my body had a sun, where would it be? What would it do? What's its purpose? What does it help me do? How does it help me recover from stressful events? How does it show me the way forward? It can be a very powerful essence to work with. And our judgment. So our sun, the sun has shone the light on so many things. And this is kind of like, we have the sun, and then so we've had all of this experience, like the universe, all of these things have aligned and shown up, and we're not the same as we were when we started this journey. Literal sense with judgment could be like Judgment Day. Many religious traditions have kind of this concept of a judgment day, of a great awakening, a rapture, this call from deity to arise and awaken, either in a new body or a new place, and really get to like join paradise. In a more liminal sense, it's also the like you've considered something, you maybe came across a new perspective, and it's kind of shaken up your core beliefs and values, and then you've made this decision to go forward and really, okay, I really want to live this. And that this moment that you decide this is a new way of being for me, and it's a new way for me going forward, that is your judgment energy. That is your, you've made that decision, and you may not be like blowing a horn telling everybody about it, or you might be. Do what works for you. Definitely. It could also be your call. You're like, okay, I'm super amped up about this thing. Maybe it's like with political activism, and you're like, okay, and you're rallying. You want other people to come join you, so you're gonna really be out there as your new self and calling in other people who can support you on the journey and make things happen. It's the veil has parted. Like we're no longer able to maintain this the not being accountable, the not being willing to see. The new day is here. There it is. What are we going to do with it? You may or may not have people rejoicing in a boat. You never know. And lastly, the world. We get another cycle. Things have moved along. So the world card is depicted in a whole bunch of different ways. It may or may not have animals. Some of them are very much more Golden Dawn influence, and so you're going to have Kabbalistic and astrological symbols. Like here we've got like this person, and there's an eagle, so that sense of like that awareness, a bit of maybe earthy, grounded, stubborn Taurusness, and then some fieriness from the eagle, not the eagle, the lion. Eagles are more like air, but then also our human selves. So there's a sense of like the integration, but also a sense of this is a cycle that is eternal. It keeps going. It keeps spiraling. And you may come across identifiable, like literal times where you're like, this is a very world moment for me. Boom. Maybe it's the completion of a project at work. Maybe it's, it's getting married, graduating from college. whatever. Like it can be anything, really. But it's generally kind of the end of a momentous chapter where you get to integrate all of these elements and all of this within yourself and without yourself. We talked earlier about that ecosystem. So you now have everything you need from this particular part of the journey. You've done everything you can do. You've acquired all the things you can do. You've acquired all the knowledge and the skills and the tools and the resources and the people and the relationships. And there's going to be more. Something comes next. Whatever it is, who knows? But that's where I feel like we get to kind of tap into, the Fool. We get to be the Fool again. Kind of that, like, all right, we start this new chapter. We start this new thing, this new cycle, a new season, new energy. And I feel like it's important to celebrate both the literal, what are the time, we think of these as like our rites of passage during our lifetime, different moments that happen. Some of them are more commonly celebrated with other people. Maybe it's just your own personal celebration. But also acknowledging it, like liminal, like times when you realize like, oh, hey, I've kind of matured a bit. Maybe you're not reacting to something in the same way. Or, you had this new perspective that, you came into this like judgment and awakening, and then you made things happen. And acknowledging the things that happened, celebrating, and really making it known to yourself, like this is a momentous occasion. This is a momentous time, and it really needs to be acknowledged. And then that way you can be ready for whatever comes next. So that was our look through the archetypes and patterns, and kind of I went into a little bit of like the interplay between the cards, kind of how they can impact each other as you're going along, their relationships, as well as the literal and liminal aspects and messages that may come about when you're pulling them up. And I mean, granted, like what I'm saying is not like the exhaustive, definitive, this is how it is. These are simply my perspectives. And what I'm hoping is it gives you some inspiration and ideas for kind of reframing ways of working, especially with the cards that are challenging for you. So go back and look at that pile of cards that were in your, oh my God, I hate these. Or maybe it's in your meh pile, like I don't know what to do with this card. And give them some more thought again. Look at it and go, am I looking at, do I want or need a literal message from this card? Or is there something more liminal, something a little more subtle or a little bit harder for me to see that might be an aspect that I can connect to that is going to give me meaning right now? And I wish you all the very best. I really look forward to getting to connect with you some more. And we're going to be working with resistance in a couple of weeks. I was calling it resistance training, but it's also kind of looking at and we're taking this information from the archetypes and then kind of looking at different ways that we can apply these to help us manage the challenges that come up in our lives, the things that they might be big tower moments or they might be slightly smaller speed bumps. We'll just chat about that. Thank you so much.